Patrick was always the kind of man who made grand promises. The kind of man who'd look you straight in the eye and say, "Nothing in this world matters more than you and our baby." Juanita used to believe every word. She'd smile and tuck her head against his chest, feeling safe even when the world outside felt like a storm. She'd given up a lot for him, left her job, moved to a quieter town, and built a new life from scratch because Patrick had said this was their future. And she had trusted that, but trust had become expensive. Too expensive. It all started unraveling. In the 8th month of her pregnancy, Patrick had started working longer hours. "It's just this project," he'd say. "I'll be free once it's done." Juanita didn't argue. She didn't want to be the kind of woman who nagged. She tried to be understanding, even when he missed the baby classes, the doctor appointments, even when he didn't come home. Some nights. "He's under pressure," she'd whisper to herself. "He still loves us." Bonnie was the one who finally said it out loud. She was Juanita's best friend and her only neighbor in the lonely stretch of road they lived on. "I saw Patrick last night," Bonnie had said, eyes soft with caution. "He wasn't at work." Juanita blinked. "Where was he?" Bonnie hesitated. "At the Blue Note, with a woman. I didn't want to tell you, but..." She looked familiar. It was Matthew's ex. That redhead he dated before the divorce. Juanita's stomach turned. But still, she told herself there had to be a reason. A misunderstanding. A work meeting maybe. She didn't want to accuse without proof. Patrick was her husband, the father of her child. She couldn't just believe rumors. Then came the day of her labor. It was 3 weeks early. She was home alone, folding baby clothes, when the pain hit hard and fast. She called Patrick. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. She tried Bonnie. Next. And thankfully, she picked up immediately. "I'm coming," Bonnie said. "Hang in there." Bonnie drove like a madwoman through the rain. By the time they reached the hospital, Juanita could barely breathe from the contractions. Her screams echoed through the hallway as nurses rushed her in. She kept asking them to call Patrick. Over and over. They did. No answer. Hours passed. She delivered a beautiful, healthy baby boy. Dark hair, little hands curled into fists. His cries strong and loud. But Patrick never came. Not that day. Not the next. He showed up 3 days later with a weak apology and red eyes that looked more guilty than tired. Said he left his phone in the car. Said he was stuck, helping Matthew with a flat tire, and didn't realize how much time had passed. Juanita looked at him, holding their newborn son, and something inside her shifted. It wasn't just anger, it was grief. She realized then that Patrick had already left her emotionally long before the birth. And now she knew it for certain. She didn't scream, didn't curse, just turned her face toward the wall and closed her eyes. That was the beginning of the end. Patrick moved back into the house, like nothing had happened. He brought flowers, made breakfast, even rocked the baby at night for a few minutes, like that would erase the 3 days he was gone. But Juanita wasn't the same. Something had cracked, clean and deep, and no amount of gestures could seal it. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, Nita. I really am. I was scared. I panicked. I didn't know how to handle it." And she'd just nod, quiet, blank. At first, Bonnie visited every other day. She helped with diapers and laundry, bringing warm casseroles and bad jokes. But even she could feel the tension in the air, the silence between Juanita and Patrick, the way Juanita didn't meet his eyes. Bonnie didn't push. She just stayed close, the way real friends do when they know you're holding something heavy inside. Juanita never asked about the Blue Note or the redhead, Maybe because she didn't want the final nail in the coffin. Maybe because she already knew. Patrick went back to work within a week. Long hours again. Late nights. He was always exhausted. "Just trying to provide for my family," he'd mutter, like that made up for the fact that he never saw his son smile for the first time, or roll over, or grab Juanita's finger tight in his chubby fist. The baby, she named him Elias, became her entire world. When he cried, she held him. When he slept, she stared at him in awe, wondering how something so perfect could come from something so broken. At night, she whispered to him softly, telling him stories about a brave little boy who had a warrior mother, and deep down, she started preparing for life with just the two of them. Patrick stopped asking her if she was okay, maybe because he knew the answer, maybe because he didn't care to hear it. Then came the day Bonnie showed up with Matthew. Juanita hadn't seen him since the baby was born. He looked thinner, more serious. But what struck her most was how different he looked from Patrick. Tired, but sincere, present. Matthew waited until Bonnie stepped out to change Elias's diaper, then leaned in close to Juanita. "I didn't have a flat that night," he said, quietly. Patrick lied. Juanita blinked. "What?" "He asked me to cover for him. Said he had something important to handle. I didn't know what it was until I saw him and Cassandra, my ex, leaving that bar the next day. I didn't want to be involved, but I couldn't keep lying to you." Her heart didn't even race. It just slowed, like it was conserving energy for something else. "Thank you," she whispered. After they left, Juanita sat for a long time in silence. She stared out the window, Elias cooing in her arms, the sunlight dancing on his cheeks. That was the moment she decided she didn't need Patrick's lies, or his apologies, or his guilt-soaked flowers. She needed peace, for her, for Elias. So one morning, she packed 2 suitcases, just clothes for her and the baby. Left behind everything else, even her wedding ring. She didn't leave a note, just took a cab to her sister's place 2 towns over, where the air smelled like lemon trees, and forgiveness wasn't a currency she needed to earn. Juanita's sister, Marisol, welcomed her without questions. Just opened the door, saw her face, the baby in her arms, and pulled her into a long, warm hug. "You can stay as long as you need," she said softly. The small house was nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, and creaky floors. But to Juanita, it felt like a sanctuary. There were no memories here, no echoes of broken promises or cold dinners eaten alone, just her, Elias, and a sister who made tea at night and rubbed her shoulders when the weight felt too much. Days turned into weeks. Juanita started sleeping again. Real sleep. Not the kind where your body rests, but your mind keeps running. Elias laughed more. He was growing fast, and with every giggle, every babble, every wide-eyed stare at the world, she felt more sure she had done the right thing. Patrick called, at first, once a day, then 10 times, then dozens. She never picked up. He left voicemails, angry ones, sad ones, apologetic ones. "You took my son," he said once. "I deserve to see him." But she never answered, because Patrick had made his choices, and she was making hers. One night, Bonnie called. Her voice was low, cautious. "You okay?" she asked. "Better than I've been in a long time," Juanita said truthfully. There was a long pause. "Patrick's not doing well." Juanita stayed, silent. "He's drinking. A lot. Lost his job last week. Got into a fight at a bar. Cops came. It's bad, Nita." Juanita closed her eyes. She didn't wish him harm. She didn't hate him, but she didn't feel pity either. Just a quiet sort of detachment, like she was watching someone else's story play out from the other side of a glass wall. "Thank you for telling me," she said, and meant it. Bonnie hesitated. "Do you want me to talk to him? Say anything?" "No. Let him talk to his mirror for once." That night, Juanita stood by Elias's crib, watching him sleep, the soft rise and fall of his chest, the little fingers twitching in dreamland. And she knew this boy would grow up surrounded by love, not confusion. He'd know his mother chose peace, not chaos, truth, not fantasy. A month later, she filed for custody and officially separated from Patrick. She kept everything clean, legal, emotionless. He didn't contest it. Maybe he was too broken. Maybe he finally understood he'd lost more than a wife. Another month passed, and one morning, Marisol knocked on her bedroom door, eyes wide. "Juanita, you should sit down." She was holding her phone, screen still glowing. News app. A headline? Local. Man found dead in motel room. Overdose suspected. It was Patrick. Juanita didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor as Marisol held her hand. The baby was in his crib, cooing softly, unaware of the storm outside his peaceful world. 3 days later, the funeral was scheduled. Juanita didn't go. She stayed home, made lunch for Elias, sang to him while the sun poured through the window. She didn't dress in black, didn't light a candle. She whispered to her son, "He missed your first breath." I don't owe him my tears. Word got out quickly after the funeral that Juanita hadn't shown up. Some people whispered. A few even judged. How could she not go? One aunt asked. He was still her husband. But those who truly knew her said nothing, because they understood. When a man walks out on his family, one piece at a time, he shouldn't expect a grand farewell. Bonnie called a week later. "I didn't think you'd go," she said gently. "I just wanted to say I was proud of you. That took strength." Juanita was rocking Elias in her arms, humming softly. The baby's tiny fingers curled around her thumb. "He made his choice," she said. I just accepted it. There were no tears left in her for Patrick. What she did feel, sometimes, was something she didn't expect. Relief. Not from his death, but from the finality of it. No more missed calls. No more guilt. No more wondering if he'd ever show up sober. Say the right thing. Hold Elias like he meant it. He was gone. And now, at last, she could breathe. Marisol encouraged her to start fresh. "Go somewhere new," she said. "A real reset." And so, Juanita did. She moved to a small apartment in the city, closer to daycares, clinics, parks. A place with noise and life, where she didn't have to constantly remember what was lost. Just focus on what was growing. She enrolled in online classes to finish the business degree she once gave up for Patrick's career, took night courses after Elias went to sleep, pushing through exhaustion because she had a vision now, her own boutique, one day, something small, beautiful, hers. She wasn't alone in this journey either. Bonnie visited every couple weeks, bringing baby clothes and stories from the old neighborhood. And Matthew? He started texting. At first, just casual check-ins. "Hey, how's the baby?" Then, "I'm nearby. Want me to drop off some groceries?" Then one day, "I miss talking to you. Can we meet?" Juanita was cautious. She'd lost too much to be careless again. But Matthew never rushed her. He came by with toys for Elias, stayed on the floor playing with him for hours. He listened when she talked about the pain, the anger, the shame, and never once tried to make himself the hero of her story. He just showed up, again and again. One Saturday afternoon, Elias took his first steps. Wobbly, ridiculous, joyful. Juanita caught him in her arms, laughing through her tears. And when she looked up, Matthew was standing in the doorway, smiling so softly it made her heart skip. They didn't kiss, not yet, but in that moment, something in her shifted. Just like it had the day Patrick didn't show up at the hospital. Only this time, it wasn't something breaking. It was something beginning. The day started to feel lighter, like the weight she'd carried for so long had finally melted into something she could handle. Juanita wasn't in love with Matthew, not yet, but there was comfort in his presence. He came around without asking for anything. He never made her feel like she owed him. And that, after everything, meant the world. Elias adored him. Every time Matthew walked in, the baby's eyes lit up, arms flailing for a lift. It was like Elias sensed the difference. Matthew didn't just hold him, he saw him. One evening, after a long day of classes and a fussy napless baby, Juanita sat on the couch, completely drained. She didn't even notice she was crying, until Matthew reached over and wiped the tear off her cheek with his thumb. "You're doing everything," he said. "You shouldn't have to do it alone." Juanita looked at him, eyes glassy. "I'm not scared of alone. I'm scared of needing someone again." Matthew nodded slowly. "Then don't need me. Just let me help. There's a difference." That night, she didn't sleep out of fear or stress, but out of calm. For the first time in years, she felt what safety could feel like, when it wasn't promised with lies. Weeks turned into months. The city became familiar. Elias started saying small words. Juanita aced her midterms. Her professor even encouraged her to submit a business pitch for a local grant. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, solid, built by her hands. But not everything stayed quiet. Patrick's mother called. One day, Juanita almost didn't answer. The name on the screen sent a chill through her chest. But something made her pick up. "Juanita," the older woman said, voice heavy with sadness. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Juanita didn't speak. "I know what my son did. I know how he hurt you. I don't blame you for not coming to the funeral. I wouldn't have gone either if I were you." There was silence, except for Elias babbling in the background. "I just want to know, can I see my grandson? Just once. I won't make trouble. I just want to meet him. I've lost everything else." Juanita sat there, heart tight. She didn't know what to say. This woman had never reached out. Not once during her pregnancy. Not when Patrick disappeared. Not after the separation. Now, when all was said and done, she was reaching across the wreckage for one last thread of family. "I'll think about it," Juanita said quietly, "but only on my terms. Of course, anything. I understand." After the call, she stared out the window, Elias asleep on her chest. She wondered if he'd ever ask about his father, what she'd say, how she'd explain a man who had failed him before he ever got the chance to be a father. One day she'd tell him, but not now, for now all he needed to know was love, and Juanita would make sure he never went a day without it. The first time Patrick's mother came to visit, Juanita kept it short. 1 hour, supervised. No photos. No taking Elias into another room. Just the living room. Juanita sitting right there, watching everything. She didn't trust easily anymore. Not with anything that reminded her of the past. The older woman, Lorraine, came in with trembling hands and soft eyes. She brought a small stuffed bear, old but clean, probably something from Patrick's childhood. "He would have liked this," she whispered, holding it up. Juanita didn't respond. She watched as Lorraine sat slowly, her knees stiff, and extended her hand to Elias. To her surprise, he smiled and waddled over, chubby legs leading the way. He let her hold him. Lorraine didn't cry. She just held him close and whispered something into his little ear, something Juanita couldn't hear, and somehow that made it easier. Juanita didn't forgive, not yet, but she softened, if only slightly. Not for Lorraine's sake, for Elias, because the boy deserved family who showed up. After an hour, she gently picked Elias back up and nodded toward the door. Lorraine stood, thanked her softly, and left. No begging, no drama. Matthew came by that evening. She told him everything, the visit, the nerves, the strange ache in her chest afterward. He listened like he always did. No judgment, no solutions, just space. "You're not cold," he said when she confessed. She hadn't felt much during the visit. "You're just tired of being burned." Juanita looked at him and didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. Later that night, after Elias was asleep, Matthew helped her clean the kitchen. They moved slowly around each other, brushing shoulders, sharing glances. And when they both reached for the same cup and their hands met, Juanita didn't pull away. She looked up. Matthew leaned in slowly, hesitantly, like he was asking with his eyes before he ever moved an inch. She met him halfway. The kiss was soft, not electric, not overwhelming, just right, like an overdue sentence finally spoken. They didn't sleep together that night. They just sat side by side on the couch, knees touching, a blanket over both their legs. She rested her head on his shoulder, and he let her be. Juanita wasn't ready for love, not the kind that sweeps you off your feet, but she was ready for peace, and that was more powerful than any fantasy. A week later, she got an email from her professor. "You've been shortlisted for the grant. You're in the final 5. She stared at the screen in disbelief, tears spilling down her cheeks. Not because she was shocked she made it, but because someone finally believed in her dream as much as she did. The boutique, Eli's Corner, wasn't just a project now. It was real. It was becoming. She picked up Elias, spun him gently in her arms, and laughed. "This is our fresh start, baby." And for the first time since the day, her water broke alone in that quiet house. Juanita felt like life was finally returning her smile. The day Juanita won the grant, she didn't scream or cry. She just sat in the middle of her small apartment, Elias bouncing on her lap, and let the quiet joy soak into her bones. The boutique would finally happen. Her name, her dream, was finally being built with her own hands, not someone else's empty promises. She called Marisol first. "They picked me," she whispered. Marisol screamed so loud over the phone, Juanita had to pull it away from Elias's ear. "You did it. I knew you would." Then she called Bonnie, who was already halfway through designing a logo on her iPad, before Juanita even finished the sentence. Matthew came over with a small bottle of sparkling cider and 2 plastic cups. "For the boss lady," he grinned, "and her CFO, Chief Fun Officer." He bent down and kissed Elias on the head. The boutique was set to open in 6 months. A small space downtown, nothing fancy, just big enough to stock the handmade baby goods and organic clothing she'd spent the last 2 years designing in secret. She'd never told Patrick. He wouldn't have cared. But Matthew, he read every label, gave notes on colors, and even helped her scout suppliers. It wasn't long before people in the neighborhood started talking. "You seeing that guy? Isn't that Patrick's old friend?" She moved on fast. Juanita heard the whispers, sometimes, from people she once called family. But she didn't flinch anymore. Let them talk. Let them guess. None of them had been there the night she bled alone on the hospital bed, while waiting for her son's father to show up. None of them knew what it felt like to rock a crying newborn, while hiding tears in the dark, afraid even the baby could hear the crack in her soul. She wasn't explaining herself to anyone. Matthew, to his credit, never pressed her for labels. He just showed up, day after day, with groceries, with baby wipes, with coffee, with peace. One night, Juanita sat across from him, Elias asleep in the next room. "Do you ever think about him?" she asked suddenly. "Patrick?" She nodded. Matthew exhaled. "Yeah, more than I want to. We weren't close anymore, but I let him lie to you. I regret that." Juanita reached across the table, touched his hand. "You told the truth when it mattered." He looked down. "I should have done it sooner." "You did it at all. That's what counts." Silence settled between them again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was honest, necessary. Then Matthew looked at her and said, "You don't owe him your grief." She swallowed hard, throat tight. "I know, but some days I feel guilty that I don't feel guilty." "That's healing," he said. "Not heartlessness." She stared at him for a long time. "Are we something?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "We're whatever you want us to be," he said. "And I'll wait as long as it takes." She nodded slowly, a tear slipping free before she could stop it. Elias cried out from the other room, and she rose to get him. As she cradled her son in her arms, heart still pounding from the conversation, she realized she wasn't afraid of needing any more. She was just learning how to choose. The boutique opened on a breezy Saturday in April. The windows gleamed, the walls were painted a warm cream, and the shelves were lined with handmade baby blankets, wooden toys, tiny embroidered onesies, each one tagged with Eli's Corner. In a simple, elegant font, Juanita stood at the front door, holding Elias on her hip as the first customers walked in. Her stomach was tight with nerves, but her smile was steady. She wore a pale yellow dress, the same color she had always imagined she'd wear on a day her life truly began again. Marisol arrived with flowers. Bonnie brought cupcakes. Matthew came early to help with setup, but stayed late because he always did. The shop filled up quickly. Mothers, grandmothers, couples with toddlers, even strangers who'd heard about the single mom who built a business from nothing. They came, they smiled, they bought, but more than that, they saw her, not as a widow, not as a woman abandoned, but as a builder, a survivor, a mother. At one point in the afternoon, a woman approached the counter, her voice soft. "I remember Patrick," she said, uninvited. "I'm sorry for what happened. He was a good man, before things got bad." Juanita didn't flinch. She didn't correct her. She just smiled and said, "People change, and sometimes we have to too." The woman nodded and walked away. It was the last time anyone said his name in the store. That night, after everyone had left, Matthew helped her lock up. The lights dimmed. The air smelled faintly of lavender and fresh wood. "You did it," he said, leaning against the counter. "No," she replied, looking at Elias playing on the floor. "We did it." Matthew smiled, but this time, he didn't try to kiss her. He didn't need to. The closeness between them didn't need a name anymore. It just was. Outside, the stars blinked into place one by one. Juanita stepped onto the sidewalk and looked up, breathing in the cool night air. "I used to think love was the big dramatic moment," she said, more to herself than anyone. "The grand gesture, the fight, the kiss in the rain. But now, I think love is someone showing up at 3 a.m. with diapers, or washing bottles without being asked, or waiting 3 years without pushing." Matthew looked at her, his voice low. "So what do you want it to be now?" Juanita turned, smiling softly. Something quiet, something kind, something real. He nodded, stepping beside her. Their shoulders touched, and that was enough. Inside, Elias yawned, rubbing his eyes as he crawled toward them. Juanita bent down, scooped him up, and kissed his forehead. Then, turning toward Matthew, she took his hand, not with urgency, but with certainty. They didn't talk about the future. They were already living it. In that little boutique on a quiet street, with a boy who had no memory of the man who missed his first breath, Juanita finally had everything she needed, not because someone gave it to her, because she built it piece by piece from the ashes, and she'd never look back.